Hey guys, Cory with Capavella, and today I've got Megan Ware, registered dietitian, nutrition awareness. You can do a better intro than that, so just tell people.
I'm Megan. I'm a registered dietitian. As Cory said, I own a private practice called Nutrition Awareness, and so we're going to be talking about nutrition today.
Yeah. So I got a prestigious degree from Virginia Tech, the science of food, nutrition, and exercise.
Okay.
However, I think I may have taken like 1 or 2 nutrition classes. I know it's important. I know about 3 macronutrients.
Okay.
So I get a lot of questions from my patients on, they're trying to recover. Hey, Cory, what do I do? And my answer, which is contained within my scope, is everything's good in moderation. Mm-hmm. And then I tell them to come talk to someone like you. So kind of give us an overview of macronutrients, why they're important.
Okay. First, I'm going to tell you why I'm qualified to talk about nutrition.
Yes, that
because
too.
I think it's kind of a big deal.
Yes.
I think a lot of times we get a lot of our nutrition information from social media or somebody that has a 6-pack. Just because they have a 6-pack, we think, hey, what's that person eating? Maybe I should eat what that person's eating, or I should work out how that person is working out. But what we know is nutrition is an individualized science. And so to become a registered dietitian, you have to have 4 years of nutrition education. You have to do a year-long internship. You have to pass a national registration exam. You have to be licensed to work in your state. So I'm a licensed dietitian nutritionist in Florida. So basically, we understand the science behind how the body works, the physiology of how the body works in accordance with what you're eating. So it's not just about chicken is healthy and broccoli is healthy and brown rice is healthy, because anybody can tell you that. But they don't really understand how the body works with that nutrition and brown rice and broccoli and exactly what it's doing and what you need as an individual based on your activity level and your lifestyle and so on and so forth.
So I think one of the most, controversial topics right now, I don't know if it's controversial, but it seems
everything in nutrition is controversial.
Okay, true.
Literally everything.
So it seems like carbs are just bad.
The devil.
Right now. They are awful right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that that's the body's primary source for fuel. So I guess how did that come about?
How did that happen?
Yeah, and tell us why it's not 100% factual.
So had we been sitting here having this conversation maybe 20, 25 years ago, you would have been saying the same exact thing about fat. Fat is the devil, which is funny because it's like this cycle. We choose one nutrient to say, this is bad, stay away from it, because it's a lot easier to do that than to tell someone the actual science behind how the body works with nutrition. So to just say, hey, cut out carbs, it's really easy to say that because then you can not eat donuts, you're not eating McDonald's, you're not eating pastries and chips and pretzels and cookies and cake. It automatically just cuts all that out with one simple rule. Now, the problem with that is you're also cutting out lots of foods that have beneficial nutrients, and your body is more likely to crave that thing that you're cutting out. So when you cut out all carbohydrates, guess what your body is going to crave? Carbohydrates. So carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are the 3 main macronutrients. They're the only 3 macronutrients. And so they all have a specific job in the body. It's not just about calories in versus calories out, like a lot of people say, because you could eat 7,000 calories of spinach in a day and your body is still going to be hungry. And it's still going to be hungry, not because spinach isn't good for you, but because it's not a good source of carbs, it's not a good source of protein, it's not a good source of fat. So when you're not getting a good balance of those macronutrients, your body's going to send you a signal and let you know. So when you take away your body's primary fuel source, which your body wants to use carbohydrates as fuel, well, now the body's going to send you a signal. And a lot of times that signal is fatigue, it's anger, moodiness, that hangry that everybody talks about, those low blood sugars. That's a signal from your body that it needs carbohydrate. So I would much rather someone be choosing good sources of carbohydrates, like sweet potatoes or apples, that give you fiber and give you long-lasting nutrients over time, than to just say, carbs are the devil, I'm going to try not to eat them. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of clients. They all come to me having tried these low-carb diets, and guess what? they're not on them anymore. That's the big thing. The big thing is, if you're trying something, I want you to be able to do that forever. Because if you can only do it for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and then you're going to look for something more sustainable, there's not really a big point in doing that at all.
So it's important to have an understanding of why you're doing these things. I think people so blindly just follow because so-and-so said it. What happens if, you said it's individual to each person, so what happens if we try something and we feel guilty for pivoting, we feel guilty like we failed, but you and I have had multiple conversations, and that's part of this nutrition journey.
It's part of figuring out your whole puzzle. And you know, one of the reasons why carbs have got a bad reputation now is because everybody thinks carbohydrate turns into fat. So that's not exactly what happens in the body, but if I wake up in the morning and I have a bagel and a cup of orange juice for breakfast, that's a lot of carbs. Now, I don't go out and bike 35 miles. I sit at my computer and I'm talking to clients. And then 4 or 5 hours later, I'm having lunch. And then if my lunch is, even if it's something healthy like a sub on whole grain wheat and a bag of baked chips and an apple, that's still a lot of carbohydrate in that meal. I never burned through the carbohydrate from this morning. So that extra fuel that's sitting there in my body now needs to be stored. And that's the storage form of fat. Whereas somebody else might go bike those 35 miles, come back, eat that sub, that apple, and those chips, and be perfectly fine and be utilizing all those carbohydrates. And that's why it's so individualized. And if you're doing something that's not working for you and you find, hey, you know, when I cut my carbs before, I started to see some results, it's just figuring out what's the right amount of carbohydrate for your body. It doesn't mean you have to go no carbohydrate. It just means you need to figure out how much fuel am I actually burning in a day? If carbohydrates are my fuel, how much fuel do I need to get through?
I love that you use the word fuel. So what I'll get is, so if someone comes to see me, they're usually recovering. And one of the first things, if they're going to decrease their activity, then they want to decrease their caloric intake, right? Because if I keep doing that, I'm going to gain weight, or I'm going to lose all the... You talk about it as fuel. Talk about that mindset. So it's less about what number of how many macronutrients, but about quality food. Is that an accurate statement?
For sure. I think people get in this this give and take, or this game that we play with ourselves of, if I burn a certain amount of calories, then I can eat a certain amount of calories. And if I'm injured or if I'm not working out that day, then I should definitely be eating less that day. But that's not really taking into account the cues from your body. So a lot of people think the most calories you burn in a day is from exercise, and that's just simply not true. You burn the most calories just with your body keeping you alive. So your heart beating, lungs breathing, skin cells regenerating, hair growing, blood flowing, all those things are burning calories constantly, all day, every day. So especially when you are injured and then you say, I'm going to take some of those calories away, the last thing your body is going to do is have enough of those calories to go towards that injury to help you repair. And it's the same thing with recovery. So maybe you had a really hard workout one day and you're not super hungry. That's just because your body doesn't need help repairing that day. I bet the next day you're going to be super hungry. But some people may look at that and say, well, I can't eat as much today because I wasn't as active today. But if your body is sending you a signal, I'm hungry, I need more, you need to listen to that. And so we tend to just follow these rules, just kind of blindly turn off the cues that our body is sending us and say, no, body, you're stupid. I know what I need according to this piece of paper or this macro count or this calorie count that I have for the day.
So, we've talked about, carbs and how they're not the devil. So if you had to explain to somebody, what's the role of protein? What's the role of fats?
Yeah. So protein is the fuel for all the structures in your system. So your bones, your teeth, your hair, your muscles, all those things are fueled by protein. So when you're doing any kind of exercise and you're breaking down muscle, so when you're creating those little tears in those muscle fibers, and that's what makes you feel sore, you need nutrition to help build those tears back up. And protein is the main thing that does that. The other thing protein does is it helps keep you full. So if I said, here's a handful of popcorn, here's a handful of steak, which one's going to keep you fuller.
Taking the steak.
Everybody knows the steak, and you don't necessarily know why. You're not like, oh, that's a really high protein food, but it's because it's high in protein, so it takes longer physically in your body to break down protein. So when you have a meal without protein, it's not going to last you very long. You're going to be hungry an hour, 2 hours after you had that meal. Fat is the only thing that sends a signal to your brain that you're satisfied. Carbs can't do that. Protein can't do that. So that's why when you go on a very low fat diet or you cut fat out, you don't feel satisfied. And so if we go back to that typical healthy meal that we started with, the chicken and the broccoli and the brown rice, you may eat that and feel physically full, but not mentally satisfied. And so you'll have a meal like that and you're like, man, I really want a cookie, or like, should I go get more chicken? Like something just doesn't feel right. And that's usually because there's not enough fat, because fat is what fuels the brain. So it's also why if you have a high fat meal, like a comfort food, French fries, ice cream, cheesecake, you feel pretty full afterwards and you're like, I don't need to eat again in an hour after you have a meal like that, because it feels really comforting. But that being said, you can get that same signal from things like healthy fats, avocado, nuts, seeds, olive oil, salmon. All those things send that satisfaction signal to your brain as well.
All right, so it's a lot of information. Next time someone comes to see me and they ask me about my opinion on macronutrients or what they should do, obviously staying within my scope, kind of the overview statement, what can I tell them? What do you think the best thing for me to tell them is?
All three of them are very important and have different roles they play in the body. So you don't want to cut out any one of those macronutrients. Usually the diets that do that are short-term solutions. It's like throwing a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. And in my experience, like I said, people always come back months later to say, I want to do something more sustainable. So it's choosing a quality source of a complex carbohydrate, a protein, and a healthy fat. And if you're doing that every single time you eat, your body is going to stay well fueled throughout the day.
Perfect. One more question. So obviously we have a lot of athletes at varying training levels. I'm going a little off script here, but
I like it.
Yeah. Talk about how to identify the correct supplements, right? So it's kind of the wild, wild west.
Oh yeah.
And I know a lot of them aren't. I mean, you can pretty much put whatever you want and slap whatever label you want. How do you make sure you're getting the right thing? And what type of decisions should you make before you even decide if you need anything?
I think first and foremost, food first, above everything. So if you are going in with a bad diet and you're just trying to out supplement that bad diet, you're not going to get the results that you want out of it. I'll have people that come in and they're like, I have 4 protein shakes a day because I want to gain muscle. But they're not doing the work to gain the muscle, so the supplement is completely irrelevant. Or you're drinking a protein shake on top of the 60 grams of steak that you had for lunch, but you did a 1-hour lift. Like, you don't need 150 grams of protein. So it is based on the individual, but as far as supplements go, they're not regulated at all. So I always tell my clients I could sweep the dust up off this floor and call it moon rock enhancing metabolism powder, and I could sell it to you legally until you proved that I was causing harm. So if you go into a supplement store having that in mind, that's going to put you in the right headspace to decide what here is right for me. I always recommend going through third-party tested companies, meaning they have another company test all of their products to prove that what is in there is in there. Another good thing to do is look for the NSF certification, Nationally Certified for Sport, not just for athletes, but for any individual, because that would ensure that you're not taking a branched chain amino acid powder that has unknown steroids in it, and then you're getting flagged as a collegiate athlete. For a normal individual, you would want to do something like that as well, because that ensures that what they say is in there is in there. But as far as like being able to say individually is a supplement right for you or not, there's probably only 5 or 6 supplements that I recommend on a regular basis, on even a semi-regular basis, out of the millions that are out there. So I think for the most part, probably don't need it.
All right, perfect. So obviously this is just the surface,
Yeah.
and there's gonna be a lot of cool stuff going forward. But if they're interested now, tell them how they get in touch with you.
So to get in touch with me, you can go to nutritionawareness.com, on Instagram at nutrition.awareness.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.